educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank y'all very much for tuning in today. I have a visionary, who has been able to pull himself up from some really challenging situations as a youngster, to now leading a little bit of everybody, right? But his visionary leadership and through his organization, Guiden Youth for Life, excels in delivering unparalleled excellence, nurturing leaders, and providing innovative solutions across multiple sectors. He and his dynamic team that's guided really by his vision and expertise, is adept at tackling a wide scope of business leadership challenges, including strategic planning, organizational development, change management, and performance optimization. Their comprehensive skill set makes them invaluable partners for businesses and diverse industries, from healthcare and education to public service and corporate environments. And his compelling story and unwavering commitment not only builds trust, but also inspires a profound belief in the power of change and leadership, which drives growth, innovation, and sustainable success. And a lot of us are dealing with that today. We're not sure where we are. We're not always confident in where we, because of our past, to get us to another place. And I think this individual right here has, shown that. If you read his bio, of course, his website and everything will be in the link in the show notes. But you'll see he's been talking to everybody from Seattle to Louis, he's been all over the place. So I thank y'all very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. And I present none other to you than Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, my brother, for having me. And I just love your platform. I know what you're doing. Thank you for the opportunity to give me some exposure.
Oh, yeah, no problem, man. And so as I stated in the bio, you've touched a little bit of everything, right? And one of the things that seems like that's true to your heart, just dealing with the youth, the young people.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, I grew up in Philly, product of the Philadelphia public school system, so,
Okay. Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
totally understand what it means to not have some of the resources, right, that is provided to those that are in parochial school or private school, even at that particular time. Now it's charter schools and everything else now, so
Absolutely.
what made you really want to dive totally into that at this stage in your life?
That's a good question, because that's actually where this whole journey started. My youth experiences. I would say that, I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, of course. And if you know Shreveport, it's the South. Civil War was fought there in the 1800s. My father left Uwood Plantation around 1968, 67. He was going to Captain Shreve High School. And at the time, it was a segregated school in the 60s. So my father left, went to Marines. That's how he got his diploma. He had to leave Captain Shreve High School, which came from Captain Shreve, which was a captain that had a Confederate station. So they named the school after him. My mother was the daughter of my grandfather was in World War I and World War II. He was mulatto. We don't say mixed, we say mulatto. So his father was white. And his father fell in love, of course, with his mother, which was a slave at the time. So story was they disowned their son, and my grandfather didn't have the resources as a young man, later went to the Army in World War I and World War II. I give that story because my mother and father was born into trauma as youth, as kids. They saw a lot growing up in Shreveport. So when I was born, a lot of that pain began to impact me. Their pain, what they were dealing with, their youth experiences began to impact me as a youth. And I just remember as early as third grade, we were bussed out of our community. We had to go into the white suburban community, probably a 20-minute bus ride, which as a kid, I'm trying to figure out why I got to go way out here into this community, which was all white. And I remember that's where it started, the whole
Hmm.
education. I remember being kicked outside the class, fighting the white kids.
Hmm.
And from there, that just really where my experience with education was, because I was moved from the black community where I was right going to school with people I grew up
Hmm.
with, in the community, everybody is family. That's your auntie, that's your
Right.
uncle, that's Big Mama around the
Right.
corner, that's the lady who runs the store, the lady who cooking the food in the cafeteria lived, 3 blocks right down the street. So going from my community, going out there, it just impacted me. And I remember as early as 6th grade, my literacy was impacted. I
Mm.
didn't feel I didn't feel confident as a young black boy because my
Hmm.
literacy, my math, my education, and by the time I got to high school, I remember I failed 9th grade twice.
Mm.
When I got to high school in 1988, I failed the first year of
Hmm.
9th grade, and then I repeated 9th grade again, and then I finally made it to 10th grade. By
Hmm.
then, I was pretty much not engaged in school. I didn't like
Right.
school. I didn't like going to school. So that's where it impacted me. And as I got older and I got into this work, I just remember seeing a lot of young folks that looked like me,
Hmm.
that was labeled, didn't want to be nothing, thug,
Right.
stupid, dumb, talking about their parents, talking about their family. And I just wanted to
Hmm.
do something. And I said, you know what? I got to try to figure out a way to bring some hope to these young folks that's in this education
Hmm.
system. And that's where I found I would say, the light. The light came in. I was ignited. I was excited. And that's
Hmm.
how I got into the youth work. And it was exciting, man. I loved it. And it really brought me a lot of
Hmm.
inspiration for me. Those youth
Hmm.
inspired me because they didn't know that I was dealing with my flaws and my brokenness and my insecurities as a man, but they were
Hmm.
educating me to see a black man that had been through so much coming into their classrooms, coming into their juvenile facilities,
Hmm.
and using what I had went through to help them see that there is hope, which hope stood for at the time, handling overwhelming pressures effectively. I just started
Hmm.
coming with the hope message, handling overwhelming pressures effectively. And that's where it took off. The youth,
You
coming
know,
from my youth experience.
and there's something that strikes to me. Well, first of all, just back up for a second, just my own little history, and those of you who have listened, you kind of know my story. My grandmother,
Mm,
she was raised in South Carolina, born and raised in South Carolina.
okay.
And in
Mm-hmm.
1944, at the age of 11, a tornado had
Mm-hmm.
come through and ripped up her
Mm,
house. So, and her, unfortunately, at that particular time, her parents were killed. Both her parents were killed.
mm.
And so she
Wow.
was there with her older brother and her sister, her younger sister. Her eldest brother at that particular time, he was fighting in the war. So, so he could
Mm,
not protect them and, support them, whatever it might have been. And so he coming home, his parents are gone. So,
wow. Mm,
so because of that, as you talk about childhood trauma, things like that, I have no clue really what my grandmother had to deal with. One,
yes,
being in South
absolutely.
Carolina, Prosperity, South
Mm-hmm.
Carolina is in Newberry County near
Yes,
Columbia, South Carolina.
absolutely.
So,
Yes.
and to your point of being mulatto, her father was raised by a Caucasian doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep,
yeah, so I
absolutely.
totally understand that whole
Mm-hmm.
idea, that story. That's my background. And
Yes.
so because of that, her mindset uh, um, was about, hey, I'm trying to get over, I'm trying to make things different, but we have no idea losing her parents, what that really meant
Yes.
to her. And
Yes.
sometimes, as you're stating, sometimes those traumatic experiences factor down generation to generation.
Yes. Absolutely.
you know
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
so now we're trying to catch up in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hearing is that, hey, you're taking the narrative like that will never work. And my grandma, that's one of the things she said. You try to take that
Mm-hmm.
narrative to turn it around on his
Yes.
head to say, you know
Yes.
what, I even though I was in this space, young people, y'all don't have
Absolutely.
to have the same type of
Absolutely.
experiences, because now we
Absolutely.
are above that and beyond that at this point.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I did. I love your brand. That would never work, right? Because I realized that those were things that I was facing, generational patterns that were
Mm-hmm.
passed down, mindsets. Think
Mm-hmm.
about education. I talked about my dad. I talked about my mom.
Right.
My grandfather had a third grade reading level,
Mm-hmm.
right? My grandmother, they didn't really talk about her education as much. So you're right. I realized that education, when we liberate and educate people, we change their mindsets,
Mm-hmm.
which helps them to see themselves different. And I wanted to really take back, which really what I know is important, which is really re-educating myself and helping others to know that no, that don't have to be you. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to be frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Let me help you understand how to unpack this trauma and this frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And those were things that we would do. I would talk to the young man about, have you ever had a conversation with your father? No, I just heard this. Wait a minute. You don't. So I want you to go talk to your dad and ask your dad what was his childhood experience like,
Mm-hmm.
and let
Mm-hmm.
him share with you. And I guarantee you're going to hear similar patterns that
Right.
you're dealing with today. Go talk to your mom about different things. And I would tell him, you got to go talk and really hear the stories
Mm-hmm.
so you can understand the true narrative of what you're facing and how you start overcoming it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in our community, it was always, be quiet, don't be talking about
Right.
stuff, suck it up,
Right.
you know, be tough, be a man. No, we got to talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you're angry because something happened and you have not talked to the people that you're mad with.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're taking it out on everybody else. You're taking it out on the teacher. You're taking it out on this girl. You're taking it out on society
Mm-hmm.
because you haven't addressed the trauma which came from the history that was way before you. Absolutely.
And so there's something
Absolutely.
else that you mentioned too. You know, backing up a little bit, where you stated, "Hey, you know what? Even though I am talking to these young people, they're actually offering me something in return where I'm learning from them too." A lot of times we don't think of it from that perspective. A lot, especially from a business perspective, a lot of times we don't
Hmm.
want to even humble ourselves to listen to our employees, i.e., our customers
Absolutely.
internally, right? You know, um,
Absolutely.
so what even encouraged you to even take the moment to even listen to maybe I'm just going to throw a number out there, a fifth grade person or someone that's even 5 years old, to even sit back and even listen to what they have to say and how that might have even gotten you to the point where you are today.
It was a lot of things. I think the biggest thing that I had to do was really be okay to accept my vulnerabilities. Being
Hmm.
vulnerable with young folks was so powerful for me. When they saw that I didn't know something and I would tell them, hey, well, I don't know this. What do y'all think we should do?
Mm-hmm.
They was like, oh, you're asking us? I'm like, yeah. So what do y'all think we should do? Well, I think we should do this. Okay, I think that's a good idea. Who else got an idea? What that does for people, it gives us a voice
Mm-hmm.
that we matter, right? So listening to young folks, I learned a lot of things. They would tell me when I was off. They would say, Coach Lou, you off today.
Mm-hmm.
Are you good with the wife? And I'm like, well, actually, we kind of had a little disagreement the other day. They was like, yeah, I could tell by the way you talking. So those things helped me with the vulnerability and
Mm-hmm.
listening to them because remember, I'm a reflection of them. I'm just an
Right.
adult,
Right.
right? And I want to be a reflection of them of vulnerability that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to say you're hurting. It's okay. So I always wanted to model that to them. So by listening to them, it was easy for them to listen to me because
Mm-hmm.
we're all leaders. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted them to know that this is your influence and this is how you can change the classroom, the school,
Mm-hmm.
your family, your community. The vulnerability piece is what I wanted to always be a model to them. Being vulnerable is okay.
So there is a again, mentality, right? We can't be vulnerable
Hmm.
or whatever it is, but there is a piece of empowerment in that we don't recognize. Because sometimes if we
Absolutely.
hold on to that, we don't realize we're going to pop, right?
We're gonna blow up.
At
Absolutely.
some
We're gonna
point in
blow up.
time. But then in that vulnerability, as these young people are seeing that could possibly make them feel empowered at the same time. So we feel empowered being
Absolutely.
able to say, hey, you know what? It's okay to not be, you know, super strong and a brick wall 100%
Hmm.
of the time.
Yes.
But also that these individuals can say, you know what, I feel free to express myself. So
Absolutely.
what I'm getting at is, or the next question I want to ask, um, how does that empowerment moment translate from, because a lot of time in business we don't want to be vulnerable even in business, right?
Absolutely.
So how do we use this empowerment moving forward? This place of vulnerability, even in a business setting.
Everything, even when I talk about the youth, I took that into the business setting as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I would meet with my team, right? I would always set the stage with vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which even adults, sometimes that's a little awkward.
Right.
So a lot of times my team, when I say, all right, guys, we're gonna do a check-in, they be like, okay, let me check my email. I'm like, no, come on, let's do a check-in.
Mm-hmm.
And they would come in and I would start to check in with my vulnerability. And I would say, okay, guys, I know we all dealing with some stuff, some things that happened this week.
Right.
So I just want to let y'all know this week, these are kind of some of the things that I'm challenged with.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want y'all to know. So when you see me, you'll know what I'm dealing with and it's not directed at you.
Mm-hmm.
Helping adults to know that it's okay to be vulnerable helps them to really share where they're at. And as a leader, I would know their capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I would know their
Mm-hmm.
mental capacity and I would know what they're facing. So I would not put too much on them. About how about this week we adjust your schedule where you just do this? Because it sounds like, you're concerned about your daughter's basketball,
Mm-hmm.
or you're concerned about your grandson, or you're concerned about yourself. How about this week you do this, right? We take this off your plate because I want to make sure that you're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It really deals with the mental health as well because we're
Mm-hmm.
able to process things that we're carrying. So it helped me and it also showed my team that it's okay as a leader to be vulnerable and share where you're at, what your weaknesses are,
Mm-hmm.
and what my strengths are. And it gives a lot of strength.
Mm-hmm.
People see you different as a leader when you're vulnerable because that means you're in tune and you have awareness of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of myself. I know when I'm upset. I know when I'm tired. I know when I'm hangry and I ain't ate. Having that
Right.
awareness
Right.
and displaying that to other people, let them know it's okay to do that
Right.
in a healthy manner. Because to your point, if you don't, you will blow up.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be Friday and it was something on Monday
Mm-hmm.
that you wasn't expressing and really went back to Monday.
Mm-hmm.
But you blew up on Friday because you took on too much. So I always wanted them to know that it's okay, put it out on the table. So now us as a team can help you process, give you some feedback, give you some wisdom, give you some guidance so you can make it through this week.
Now, how have you seen that affect productivity within your team that ultimately affects your customers on the external side? How have you seen productivity change?
Because everyone is about productivity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not able to perform, there is no productivity. I want you to be performing at your highest level, your mental capacity, your emotional capacity, your physical capacity, because what happens is all these things wear on us,
Mm-hmm.
right? It wears on our body.
Mm-hmm.
It wears on us. So a lot of times I wasn't thinking about the productivity. I always saw
Mm-hmm.
my team as my client. You are
Mm-hmm.
important first. I care about you.
Hmm.
Oh, well, I need to be doing this. Wait a minute. Before we get there, I want to make sure you're good. So let me make sure
Hmm.
you have the capacity. Let me make sure you have what you need first, right? Then you can
Mm-hmm.
produce and perform the task. I had to do that because a lot of times as leaders, we would be so externally focused
Mm-hmm.
till we don't internally focus. I am no
Mm.
good if I don't have the right, I would say, substance in myself,
Mm-hmm.
the right tools,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, I cannot produce, which means I'm just performing. And everyone is going to see that I'm not performing at my highest level. And the biggest impact is always going to be the customer and the client
Mm-hmm.
because you have to think about your team first, yourself and your team always.
So that's something that you don't hear people talk about because you say you're thinking about your internal customers first. A lot of times
Hmm.
we so get caught up in the bottom line that we just want them to produce. We just want them to meet their numbers, whatever it might be. Not understanding that we need to understand their mental health one way or another.
Yes,
Their well-being.
absolutely.
So um, did you go into business thinking about, hey, you know what, I'm gonna create this business, but I understand the importance of those that are be working with me, my partners, customers, as I'm trying to grow to the next level.
Yes, because I always make relationship my priority. People want relationship
Mm-hmm.
first. Relationships establish trust. So I always want my team to know I'm about you. I'm about the relationship. Number two, I am about building trust with you.
Hmm.
And that's really the biggest thing I knew was important was
Mm-hmm.
relationship, which establishes trust. And when people know you care about them,
Mm-hmm.
that means that you see them as an individual, not as a product, not as a transaction,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of times we get to the productivity, the transaction. I want the relationship. That's more important to me, which
Mm-hmm.
means trust. And
Mm-hmm.
when those two are the foundation, we can get to transactions, we can get to productivity, we can get to outcomes, deliverables, whatever those big words we trying to get to,
Right, right.
data, measurements, whatever that is, right?
Right.
But we got to think about the individual
Mm-hmm.
first. The individual person has to be the focus first. And that takes intentionality because I always had to remember what I need. I would
Mm-hmm.
show up and people will have expectation of me to do something,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't know that I was at low capacity
Mm-hmm.
and I really needed some love. I needed some support, you're gonna be okay, it's all right. And sometimes we forget that people need encouragement.
Wow, wow. Dr. Lewis, man, I appreciate you coming on the show today. But I just would like for you to share with the listeners before I let you go. Where can it reach out to you? Because again, everything is about relationships, and I'm looking to
Yep.
elevate my leadership skills one way or another. And I'm looking for a coach. So, Dr. Lou, where can they find out where you could talk to them and coach them through to their next stage in life?
Well, there's three places. Of course, you can go to my website. It's www.guideyouforlife. That's GUIDEN, the letter U, the number four, life, LIFE.com. Also, you can reach out at my number, 888 And then also you can reach me on LinkedIn, Dr. Lewis Guiden Jr. Those are my three places you can reach out to me. And there's ways I can support you.
Nice. Nice, man. I appreciate you coming on the show today, man. You've provided a
I
lot of
appreciate you.
information, man. But I gotta ask you the question, man, before I let you go, man. I gotta ask you the
The
question,
question,
man.
the question, the question, the
All right,
question.
of course it's the would you rather question, right? So, would you rather choose three doors or a fork in the road?
You know, I'm gonna answer this question. I'm gonna choose a fork, and this is why.
Okay.
Number one, a fork provides nourishment, right? I use a fork
Hmm.
to eat.
You're right.
Okay.
I
I
got
use
you.
a fork to eat, right? I like a fork because it's pointed, right? It's
Okay.
pointing, it shows the direction, right? I can see and I can kind of know what four, the fork is four
Okay.
prongs. I got four roads I can take.
Okay.
Okay. The door, I don't know because I don't know what's behind it. I watch them games and they be like, "Oh, do you want door one, door
Right.
two, door three?" No, give me the fork in the road because I can see the road because I'm a visioner. I'm a
Mhm.
visioner,
Right.
right? So I like to kind of see the direction where I can go.
Right.
So I like the fork in the road versus the doors. I want to know I want to see where I can go. I'm a visioner.
No one ever referred to the fork as an actual fork. You know.
Yeah. See, I'm a visioner. I'm thinking I'm a visual learner.
No one
Fork,
actually used
okay?
that. But I appreciate um, your viewpoint on that because again, there's another part of that you mentioned, which is using the fork for nourishment. Again,
Hmm.
somebody,
Hmm.
no one else has referred to it that from that perspective. Everybody's
Yes.
taking it so literal. A lot of times people take it more
Yes.
literal than figurative. I start off by saying use your imagination, right? I say that,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
so people have said, hey, with the doors, they're fiberglass, they're glass, they're see through, whatever it might be,
Hmm. Hmm.
So there's no parameters, there's no right or wrong. It just allows
No.
individuals to see, Dr. Lewis, I resonate with you. I see where you're coming from. I understand why you started business. I see why you're talking to the kids, things like that. Just something as off the wall as this question might be.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I call it innovation. How to use your innovation and creativity
Right.
and think beyond whatever it is. And even to your point, being employed, I had to think beyond employment
Mm-hmm.
and really start being innovative of ways that I can do business for myself.
Right.
Absolutely.
Man, Dr. Lewis, I thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it. Look forward. I'd love to come back and do
Most
some more
definitely.
work with you.
Of course.
Well, thank you.
Sure, no problem. And you know what, y'all, thank you for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. Of course, all his information will be in the show notes. And I will talk to y'all a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?